Hi guys, welcome to The Witch in Hair. So today I'm going to take part in the hashtag Hearth and Home decks that was created by Boho Tarot. I saw Stellar Rain Dancer do this on her YouTube channel and it really inspired me to do my own as well. And I've always wanted to show my decks to you guys as well. I haven't had a chance to do a tarot video, so let's get into it. So the first prompt for this tag is Hearth and Home, the deck that feels like home. So the deck that I think would relate to this prompt would be Sacred Ireland Celtic Moon. So I chose this deck because, as you know, I'm Irish and I live in Ireland, and this deck basically it shows imagery and themes relating to Ireland and our goddesses, our landscape, our seasonal holidays, and the moon cycle, because it's very related to the feminine divinity, and the moon is very important in this deck. So it shows Bowen here. She represents, or she's the goddess of the River Boyne, which is actually quite close to where I live. Loch Crew is also quite close to where I live. And it has some keywords here that relate to these sites for guidance as you pull a card. The seasons, like this is Samhain for new beginnings, the Morrigan, which is a goddess very dear to my heart, for renewal. The Egg Moon, I think they've given each moon their own name. Not like the classic ones that you might be, you might know yourself, like Pink Moon or Beaver Moon. They're not really related to Ireland per se, because we don't have beavers here, and there's certain things that don't really work for our seasonal changes and our location in the world. So I think they've created their own names for these, I guess in relation to the Irish landscape. Locations that I've been to and are quite close to where I live. This is like St. Bridget's Well, for inspiration, and Bridget herself, which is also a goddess that I work with and is very dear to my heart and related to our mythology and folklore. So this deck really feels like home. It's relates to me so much and my daily life and the landscape in Ireland, and it's just amazing. I love it so much. I was so happy to have found a deck that was just so specific to Irish folklore and mythology and feeling. Ishnok, I went to the Bealtaine festival in Ishnok and I saw these particular symbols and fire displays. They were incredible, and because I was there, maybe not this specific year that they did this, but I was definitely at Ishnok for the festival, and it's just amazing, and it makes me so happy to live here and to be connected with this land, and of course Newgrange, and yeah, it's great. I love it. It really feels like home because it's places that I can visit pretty much whenever I want, and goddesses that are very close to my homeland. So yeah, that is the Celtic Moon Oracle deck. So our next deck will be for the prompt Gather Together, the deck that reminds you of friends and family. Now I know what you're thinking. We all know what this deck is. It's the Rider-Waite. So I know it's a deck that everyone has seen and knows about, but maybe that's why I chose it, The Rider-Waite is a very accessible deck, and it's relatable and it's familiar, and it's something that I think it's very good when it comes to readings for friends and family. This is one of the only decks that I have that feature humans, or at the very least, besides the Celtic Moon deck, but it features humans that are not figures. They are, they don't have names, they're just a face, and it's easy to see yourself in these characters. And you know, the Rider-Waite is very good for representing very different aspects and stages of life. So you could very easily see yourself in one of these characters, which means it's more accessible to people, you know. And I've often done readings for friends and family with this deck, and you know, people tend to take well to it, you know. When you pull the Fool, they might really see themselves in this character, and I think that works very well for this prompt in particular, you know. When it comes to friends and family, there's a kind of comfort in you know, the people close to you, and because the Rider-Waite is very familiar and it can be quite close to a lot of people, there is a comfort in these characters as well. Like in a way, a lot of us have worked so much with them that they've become familiar and in a way become friends and family, you know. We've seen these faces for so long and so often that they are our friends and our and maybe our family. They're close to us in some way. So yeah, that's what I have to say about the Rider-Waite for this prompt. So the next prompt in this tag is Light Up Your Life, the deck that lights your way through the dark. So I chose the Deviant Moon Tarot for this prompt, and now it might seem a bit strange, but there's a reason for it. So the imagery, as you can see, is quite dark and very stylized, and I personally really adore the artwork. It is just amazing. This is the second deck that I ever purchased because I was just fascinated by the art style, and I chose this deck in particular for this prompt because this deck has gotten me through a lot of dark shit. I really do believe that sometimes the darkness is necessary. Like, you should face your fears in order to overcome them, in a sense. So even though the imagery is quite dark, I find that when I'm in a dark place I tend to reach for it because it has a lesson to teach me. So in order to reach the light, sometimes it's important to face the darkness, you know? And yeah, that's pretty much the reason why I chose this deck for this particular prompt. That's all I have to say about it, really. Not much else. I just really love it so much. But yeah, that's the Deviant Moon deck. So the next prompt is Rainy Days, the deck you want to curl up with on a rainy day. So I chose the Ashen Thorne deck for this. I agree with Stellar Rain Dancer as well, that this deck is just so cozy. I don't know what it is. I particularly was thinking about the rainy imagery in some of these cards, like this one. I did choose some of these cards in particular to show you, but it's so cozy. They're like the animals and like how cute the art style is, and it's very autumn, I find, as well. I don't know if that was an intention for the artist, but it's very, you know, orange and browns, and it's very autumny, which is a very rainy time of the year, and it'd just be so nice to like snuggle up with a blanket with the rain outside and with a cup of tea or a cup of hot chocolate and just do a tarot reading with this deck. It's just so comforting, and the the kind of toned down autumn oranges and browns and stuff really make this deck really cozy and something to just make you feel warm and happy inside when outside just isn't that great. The art style and artwork in general for this deck is just absolutely gorgeous. When I saw this deck, I knew I had to have it straight away. But yeah, you can't beat it. It's definitely one of my favourite decks, and yeah, this is the deck I chose for this prompt. So the next prompt is Harvest Nights, the deck that evokes harvest vibes or bonfire nights. And it's no surprise that I chose the Halloween Tarot for this prompt. So this deck is kind of it's kind of a vintage American Halloween kind of theme to it. I love the art style, it is just amazing. I love this kind of stuff. I love the negative space around the characters and the props and stuff like that. And Harvest Nights, you know, that's very much associated with Halloween, as Halloween and October tend to be the end of the harvest season, and Halloween is very famous for having bonfires, especially on Halloween night itself in Ireland anyway. Ireland was known for having ancient bonfires for many of our festivals, but for some reason the lighting of bonfires just anywhere still happens today. Not always legally, people still do it. And yeah, Halloween's just associated with all those things, and I thought this deck would be a perfect fit for that prompt. And fun fact, the month of October in Irish is called Jerafor, which translates to end of harvest, which I think is pretty cool. And for those of you who don't know as well, the word Samhain is the modern Irish word for November, because Samhain is actually the 1st of November, it's not October 31st. The Irish word for Halloween is Iha Hauna, which translates to Summer's End Eve, because Samhain means Summer's End, which I think is pretty cool. But yeah, I love this deck. It's amazing. I recommend anyone get it. It's just, if you want to have that real Halloween feel when you're doing tarot readings, this is the deck for you. But yeah, that's the Halloween tarot. So the next prompt is Handmade with Love, the deck that feels like a homespun gift. The deck I chose for this is the Wisdom of the Cailleach. This deck was made by Jane Brydeson. This deck was made locally in Ireland, and it is just such a wonderful, heartfelt deck. I just adore it so much. I think a lot of love and dedication to this Irish deity really went into this deck. This is not a deck that you can buy anywhere, you will have to buy it directly from the creator herself. It's kind of an expensive deck, but it's so worth it. The imagery is amazing and beautiful. There's something so, like, it's ancestral in a lot of ways. I think the Cailleach herself is considered an ancestral deity. And yeah, I just feel like so much love and dedication went into this, and the Cailleach herself is something that a lot of us forget about, I think. Like, she's a very primal, old, and I think a very important deity that we should all remember. Like, in a way, she's part of our landscape and part of our history. There's something so ancient about her, and I think this deck was created out of that sort of love and admiration for what she represents. And yeah, I don't know, I can't really explain it. There's just something so comforting about this deck. I was almost going to put this deck into the Gather Together, because there's something so familiar and comforting and like family, like some sort of familial thing that I feel with this deck. But I think it belongs with Handmade with Love, because I do truly believe that this deck was made with passion and love and dedication, and I think it was a perfect fit for this prompt. But yeah, I really recommend this deck for anybody who's interested in the Cailleach. It's just, I love it so much. But yeah, that's that deck. So the next prompt is Thankful, Grateful, Blessed, the deck that helps you appreciate the good times. So I chose the Field Guide to Garden Dragons Oracle deck. And I chose this deck because when I was a kid, I absolutely loved dragons. And I have a really big interest in gardening and growing my own food, and when I saw this deck I could not resist. But this deck, it really speaks to my inner child, and there's nothing like dark or dreary about this deck. It is just so playful, so colourful and creative. It really helps me appreciate the good times. It really does. It reminds me of my childhood. It makes me think about my appreciation for nature and the food that we grow. This is such a great deck for a kitchen witch in particular. Yeah, and look at Peanut Butter Dragon. That's like the cutest thing in the world. And the keyword is companion. Guess who its companion is? It's the Jelly Dragon or the Jam Dragon. It's just such a cute deck. It really speaks to me. It brings me so much joy. Yeah, there's not much more to say. It's just so wonderful, and it makes me smile every time I look at the imagery. I just cannot resist. But yeah, that is the Field Guide to Garden Dragons. And lastly, the final prompt is comfy and cozy, the deck that is always there for you. So I chose the Tarot of Mermaids for this prompt. Now, I wouldn't necessarily call this deck comfy or cozy necessarily, but the reason why I chose this deck is because it is the very first deck that I ever bought. It was one of the only decks I owned for a couple of years when I first got it. I bought this deck in Kinsale in County Cork when I went there for a holiday. So basically it's really been there for me for a very long time. It was the only deck that I had worked with for a number of years before I bought the Deviant Moon. So it's the oldest deck I have, and it's been with me for how many years now? I've been doing this for maybe around 5-6 years now. So it's been through a lot, as I have been through a lot, and it's always been there for me. Even though I've gotten new decks over the years, it's definitely one I always return to, and it's something that I'm very familiar with. And it kind of reminds me of my, the beginning of my path and learning tarot, and how scary and intense that was, and how confused I was. It's just been with me for a very long time. So the artwork is beautiful. I'm not really a fan of how small the imagery is. I think a lot of detail is lost in this, and the big borders and stuff. I'm not really a fan of that, and I might trim it at some point. But the art is fantastic, and if anything I wish that these cards were a little bit bigger. But yeah, we've been together for a long time, me and this deck, and it reminds me of my summer holidays. So I remember on this particular holiday that I got this deck from, we went to a lot of beaches, and I remember that I had left the shop that I went into. Sorry, no. I went into the shop, I saw the deck, and I was like, oh, I kind of want to, try tarot. I want to get my own tarot deck. And we left the shop because I was kind of like not too sure about it. But something in me was like, get the deck, you have to get it. And then I did. I went back in and I bought it, and I do not regret it at all. And it's been with me ever since. And yeah, I really appreciate it, and it just reminds me of my humble beginnings, yeah. So that's pretty much it. I really enjoyed doing this tag. Thank you to Stellar Rain Dancer for sharing hers. I really enjoyed it. I'm quite a fan of her channel. And thank you to Boho Tarot for starting the tag in the first place. I hope you enjoyed watching my my version of this tag, and I hope you enjoyed the decks that I showed you, and I hope that I made sense. I'm not very good at talking off the bat. It's very hard to think of what to say sometimes about some things, but I hope it was consistent enough and enjoyable. Yeah, so thank you so much for watching, and many blessings. Go to agat, agus slán go fóill.